Hi, Ann Merrill here. My topic today is rare herbs. It's come up a couple times recently. The first time it came up was an herbalist or a couple herbalists wrote this pretty new book, and it's pretty popular. I've seen people cutting and pasting recipes from it, and sharing them on the internet. And I was really shocked to see some of the herbs that were being used in these recipes because they're so there's a lot of herbs that are really valuable medicinal herbs that are it's possible to grow them. Some people are growing them, and it's even possible to grow them in a ecologically sustainable way and so forth. And if you're a committed herbalist and you really do a good job of very carefully sourcing all of your herbs, it could be a sustainable proposition. But I was surprised to see that these herbs were being used in recipes in an herb book as if these are just, you know, um, the place to start when you're putting together your apothecary. So let me back up and say that the way that I got into herbalism in the first place was through an interest in the plants that were growing around me, both the garden plants that my mom was growing and then the wild plants that grew on their own. And I was just always curious how they could be used as medicine. I've come to realize a big part of it is learning how the body works, learning the herbalism, not just the plants. Um, but I've learned my primary interest has always been in the easily accessible plants. And when I worked at the pagan store, Natural Magic, in Austin, Texas, it, there's a gazillion ways you can break everybody down into two kinds of people. But one of those ways that I really noticed working at that shop was that there are people who really, really want the unusual, exotic things that everybody else doesn't have. They're rare. Maybe most people haven't even heard of it. It's expensive. There's only one tree left, something like that. And then on the other extreme are people who are more of my orientation, which what what I love is finding out the sort of the magic of the common, of the everyday, of the things that are right in front of you. For me to find out that this incredibly common weed that I've seen thousands of times can have this profound healing effect, that's really exciting and magical to me because it's that hidden in plain sight quality that I find really thrilling, much more thrilling than something that's exotic, expensive, and rare. But, definitely, not to say these are the only two orientations, but these are different orientations and how people look at things. And so, um, yeah, so when I'm teaching, I want to start with the common, easily accessible things. And, maybe there's going to be times where you want to use something more rare, but that's the core of my Materia Medica. The Materia Medica means the things that you use as medicine. The core of my Materia Medica is the common, everyday, easy to get. It's both weeds, easily cultivatable, and then also the things that you can buy in a grocery store, like cinnamon and clove, like the um, very common herbs of commerce that are used as seasonings in our food. Those are my favorite things to use as medicine. So, um, yeah, so I saw this new herb book and I thought, wow, these are some really kind of rare plants to have people, especially beginners, making their first herbal formulas who don't, might not know how to use them very effectively yet. But why do they need these rare herbs? And then right after that came up, um, somebody else asked me. Um, I had mentioned that sandalwood is just not plentiful. It's a tree that requires a lot of time before it's harvestable. You're harvesting the wood in order to get the sandalwood, so that's you know um, just just the, trees grow fairly slowly, and if you're harvesting the wood, then you're taking a part of the growing part of the tree. It's just not a very and it only can grow in certain areas. So I look at this as, okay, here's my perspective on it. The house I grew up in, there was a book on the shelf that was called Plants Are People Too, one of my mom's books. And so this was a phrase that from the very beginning of when I could read, it was a phrase that I saw on an everyday basis, and it's sunk really deep into my brain, and I think it all the time. Plants are people too. And one way I think that's true is that I think of sandalwood as a sort of person. It's a very special person. It's irreplaceable. Somebody asked me, what would you replace sandalwood with? And I don't even think of it in those terms, because you can't think, how would I replace this person? Each person is unique. Each person's an individual with their own characteristics that you're never going to find an exact overlap. You're never going to find another person who's exactly like that person. So then it comes down to, what role are they playing in this particular situation? And so, as unique and wonderful as somebody may be, if they are waitressing at a cafe and they leave, somebody else can come in and waitress at that cafe. It doesn't mean they're the same person. And I think if you think of it that way, it really helps with changing formulations, because if you have an incense blend you like to make, or essential oil blend that you like to make, and it has sandalwood in it, I'm not saying that you could take something else and replace it one for one with sandalwood and have it end up smelling exactly the same. That's not how it works. Your cafe is not going to be the exact same place with a different waitress. But, you could still get the general overall of it. And there's an element of herbalism that's about honoring the plants. It's not just that we should honor the plants as we use them. It's also that in the use is the honoring, and that in a way part of what we're doing as herbalists is showing that we honor the plants, or at least it can be. That's my kind of herbalism. There's also the kind of herbalism that's just, we pick and dig up everything that's valuable on the entire mountain and sell it for as much money as we can. That's herbalism too. But because of that kind of herbalism, we're in a situation where a lot of these really fantastic herbs that are sort of easier to use and stronger and have a longer shelf life, a lot of those herbs are completely devastated in the wild. And so, yeah, I don't tend to be a, hard and fast, black and white kind of a person. And so I wouldn't say never, ever, ever use the rare exotic herbs. But I do think that in a holistic herbalism where you honor whole people and you honor whole plants, that it's important to think about where does this grow? How does it grow? What effect am I having on ecology by using this herb? So I suppose I'm realizing that doesn't really give an answer of what to do when you do see a formula. It does. Okay, here's the thing. Here's how herbalism works well, is you think about what are your objectives and how can those be fulfilled, and you could just let go of the formula that you've already seen for that contains the rare herbs. Just start from scratch and build it anew. That's the way. I don't know. I always have this problem with recipes and formulas. Don't get too attached to the particulars of the formula. Try to understand what it's doing in the body, and then you can. It's pretty rare. You can almost always get the same effect using different herbs. So that's about all I have to say about that, and except that, I would like to dedicate this particular um, little snip of audio to sandalwood and its spirit. It is such a fantastically beautiful plant, and the picture that I'm going to put up with this is um, I was at Haleakala, which is in Maui on Hawaii, and I just thought this was the most interesting plant. I was so curious about it. I had no idea what it was, and so I took this photograph and figured, well, I'll look it up later. And then I saw a picture of sandalwood and was like, that is the thing I took a picture of. This was sandalwood growing, not wild, but sort of escaped from cultivation in Maui. All right, peace to you. Ciao.